been charged with attempted murder, serious assault to permanent disfigurement, permanent endangerment of life, times 2. So that was, they're 2 longer words for attempted murder, basically. So you're talking 3 attempted murders almost. He shouted, effing stab back out. And I spun round and I says, you stabbed nobody. As soon as that's happened, he's jumped up, he's pulled the Stanley out, he's caught me for it there. That was a hospital done that, but he caught me for it there in a straight line. And I wasn't sure what I said, what did you do there? He caught me for there, run through here, and run. I said, right, we're on. I'm in Tapia, he caught me, the one in the back of the head, 3 in the back of the head, and I'm strangling him. I'm strangling the life of him, and the blood was pouring at him. And I knew deep down that was no paper cut. I mean, and what was happening was my grip on him was starting to get looser and looser, and I was starting to get woozier and woozier. 2-3 seconds, felt like days, him pointing the gun at my head, and then I seen his horn shaking, and I thought, he's not got the balls to shoot me in the head anyway. And my stomach was sort of, oh my God, it was like a weight. But then he went like that, bang, blasted his, tried to shoot us in the stomach and shot us in the top of the head. And I've turned around and I'm shouting, shoot him again, he'll come back. And at that point I thought, fuck you, man. And I just burst at him, and I managed to get the keys and I unlocked the door and I fell into the clothes. One of them crowned us with a hatchet right at the head. All the blood was pouring down me by that point. So I was like pulling myself up the stairs. Paul Ferris was at the top one. You had your Blink McDonald, you had Chamber McLean, who I knew personally. Chamber, a good guy. You had like your McGoverns and all that. You had all your real villains at that point. But Paul Ferris always stood out down there, as I say. There wasn't any as it didn't know the name. There's still to this day, you still hear his name being whispered in pubs. But I mean, he's an old man now, isn't he? I'm not saying it's bad about him, but he is an older man now, but he still holds that sort of charisma and fear up here. So that was the sort of names that we all heard.
Right, everybody, I am here with Paul Smith out of Glasgow. He's done 14 years. It's a hell of a story. I know many people have seen the other stuff we've done with Glaswegians, Paul Ferris, Ian Blink McDonald. People are fascinated by the many stories up there of the various crime families and factions and how it's developed over the years. And Paul is from a slightly younger generation than the Ferris and them, but he is familiar. Huge thank you for coming on, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into your full life story then, we just like to grip the viewers with one of your craziest stories, perhaps from your prison time. If you've got one of them, we could start with, please.
Most definitely. You know, prison is a violent place. Of course it is. All prisons are, and Scotland's no different. But it's not all 24/7 violence. I mean, there was some funny stories as well, but I did see some nasty stuff, some really violent stuff. But one of the best stories, I don't know if you ever remember, you used to get the wee 30p bottles Iron Brew. They were about that size. And well, I'm saying Iron Brew, you probably wouldn't remember that down there, but up here they were really popular. And in the visiting room in Pullman, there's a lass who used to come to see, and they never searched women, never. It was maybe a bit of security lapse on their behalf, but I certainly took advantage of it. And I says to her, start filling them with whiskey and put a wee bit of Iron Brew in them. And wait 2 days, so put 4 in you, wear the long kind of 3/4 length coats the women wear, put 4 of them in, go up to the canteen, buy the sweets, and then set them on the table. So I used to sit there, knocking them back. And then a lassie used to say, I thought I was brand new, and a lassie used to say, she'd see me, I'd be starting to go like that, and starting to get louder and louder. And one time, it was another lassie came up, and she came up with vodka. And I don't know why she thought, she didn't think I put Iron Brew in it. She came up with straight vodka and an Iron Brew bottle, a wee bit suspicious. Knocked it back, total blackout. Woke up in the segregation unit, get told that I'd attempted. Now, I never actually hit a screw. I attempted to hit a screw. I stood up and basically fell right flat in my face, and then I jumped in tappies. That was certainly not the end of me getting alcohol or other substances into there. We used to get the friends, they would fling big 2 litre bottles full of booze, with the parcel and that sellotaped it, and it would come right there. And we had boys in the gardening, and they used to be all sitting, they were all lined up, like they were all waiting on different people, and they'd all come in there into their bins, and they'd run down to the hall, they'd hustle through the windies to you. And one time we all swallowed Eckies, and we were all boozing, and we forgot we do the education. And we'd all just took Eckies and that, but we were all young boys, we were only like 16 or 17. And as if you're taking ecstasy before, you know what I'm talking about. The jaw starts to go, and the heat, exactly, the eyes are starting to do that. And we were sitting in class, and it was like somebody was tapping the pencil, and that was enough beats for us. We were all sitting before you knew it. We were all telling each other, I see you. We go out together. I mean, you're going to start a business. I love you and all that. It was complete madness. The art teacher couldn't cope. He was cracking up. He shouted to the screws, "Oh, they bastards are in their own drugs." And the screws they just laughed because they nipped me were in and carted us back to the hall. You know, I've got millions of funny stories like that, but there was a lot of violence I seen in the YOs. It was mere slashings. A lot of slashings. I seen a boy getting slashed with a cup of chips once, and it was disgusting. It was all bravado. It was all young boys wanting to show how hard they were. And a boy had gave his pal extra chips on the pass, and the boy came up and he only gave him a couple, and an argument broke out, and the boy loaned it right at the pass and slashed him. It was disgusting. All the food and everything. It was really nasty. The cons were different. The cons. I get moved up to shots in 2005. Poland had had enough of it by that point. I wasn't even 21 yet. You're meant to be 21 before you go to an adult prison up here. I don't know if it's the same down your way, but up here it's 21. I think they just had enough. They were all causing chaos daily. The screws couldn't handle us. The governor just hated every one of us, and I think they just went, you know what, just get them to hell, get them out the door and put them in an adult prison. First day up there, we were sitting in reception and we're walking through, and it was the best way to describe it is if you ever remember that Australian man, what was it called? I forget. The Australian man, the old jail man, the female jail back in the day. I'll come back to this, but when I was walking down, it was all that dark brick, and it looked exactly prisoner cell block H. It looked identical to that. And I'm walking, and then all the bells started going off, and a boy had been stabbed in the hairdressers. I remember sitting thinking to myself, "Fuck me, I'm not in Kansas anymore. This is serious stuff up here." And you know, there was boys up there doing 30 years, maybe longer, a lot of lifers. So it was people up there. When you stepped out of line in that jail, it really earned its reputation as being the most violent jail in Scotland, and I believe to this day it still is. But I think the worst thing I ever seen that turned me sick was it was in Kilmarnock. It was in a Kilmarnock prison in the gym hall. A boy had, with some altercation, I don't know what it was, but two boys sat about him with a big 50 the big weights, 50 dumb, and he was cracking it off his head, and another boy was stabbing him, and it was sickening, Sean. There wasn't, I've seen violence for years, but that's turned my stomach. And you know that way you wanted to help the guy, but you thought, I don't want it any day. I don't want to be the next one lying under that. And even the screws and everything were going, "Please, boys, he's had enough. You're going to kill him. And oh my God, that's I would say by far that is the worst thing I've ever seen, other than probably the worst fight I've ever been in the jail. That was really bad. Got Kilmarnock was a disaster of a place.
Wow, this is good grief. That's horrific, isn't it? What you just said right there. It's thrown my head off a bit.
Yeah.
Just thinking about that. Did he get scraped up and sent to hospital, or what?
Oh, it was the paramedics were brought right into the prison, right into the gym hall, and we were all evacuated out I mean, the guy survived because the boys done it, get charged with attempted murder. And I heard through the grapevine that one of them got an extra 10 years, added on to the 15 year he was already in. But it was a serious one. It was really, really serious. How that guy survived, I'd very much doubt if he walked away without brain damage or speech impairment or whatever. But at Kilmarnock's got a spotty past. I mean, there was a boy murdered in there a few years back. I think it's only time in Scotland MD's ever been murdered in custody, certainly in my lifetime anyway. There's been multiple things because they're no like the SPS. Going mad to them trying to do something. Sorry, my daughter's trying to just.
Right.
There's no like the SPS where they're trained. These were guys working in Tesco 2 months before, and then they're put in with some of the worst criminals in Scotland, and they're expected to control them. It just doesn't work.
Wow. All right, Paul. Let's go back then to how you got into this situation. What was it like for you growing up there in Glasgow? I assume you were born in Glasgow.
Well, I was born in Cumbernauld. It's literally, it's the borders, right in the border of Glasgow. I mean, it was an overspill of Glasgow, so all your mums and dads all came from Glasgow, every one of them, because what had happened is in the 60s, the city get too much. The people were living the type of people, and they built Cumbernauld as like an overspill. So we're 15 minutes from Glasgow, but I've been in Glasgow my full life. For me, starting out, you know, we started out when I was a boy. We were just coming out of Margaret Thatcher era, and there's, I think, the only two words more hated in Scotland than Margaret Thatcher's probably Celtic and Rangers. It's she really wasn't liked up here, and with good reason. I mean, she done a lot of bad things to this country. That being said, there was a lot of single parents. I came from a single parent home myself in the beginning, and money was tight. You know, it was always tight. It was in a way, a lot of ways how I got into chefing as well. So I'll get to in a minute. But money was tight. But what you got in spades was violence, drugs, and antisocial behaviour. That was right on your doorstep. You didn't have to go looking for it. You looked at your window and you seen it, and it was. I mean, you used to look at it when I was a boy. You'd see them all the young man's battling in the street, and I thought that's great. But you know, everything from the outside's always great. When you're outside looking in, always looks a lot better than when you're in it. Because when you're in it, all you can see is the negative, and you're wanting back out. And me being me and all, I mean, there was nothing stopping me going and getting a job. I don't believe in all that crap because I came for this, and this. I had to become a criminal. Nonsense, complete nonsense. There's plenty of my pals that worked every day of their life, still do to this day. Me personally, I gravitated towards that. I loved it. I loved the commotion. I loved everything about it. And, you know, I was as violent as I could have been. I was also a thieving wee shite and all. I mean, they say he'd have stolen it and it wasn't nailed down. Well, if it was nailed down, I'd have just hit a hammer and stole it anyway. There wasn't much I wouldn't have.
Paul, what was your first experience of violence that you were involved in?
First experience of violence that I was involved in, that was, fair back as I remember, there was a bit of gang fight. We were all stoning in maybe 6 or 7 days, and another mob had come up for another scheme, housing estate scheme as we call it up here, and they had an altercation broke out, and the boy got stabbed, and one of his pals thought that I had stabbed him. I actually didn't stab him, my pal did, but I never. And he went for his, and I swung the pole, and I don't think I was even meant to hit anything, but I clocked him right in the side of the eye, and he fell, and the blood was everywhere. And another one was lying, he'd been stabbed, and I thought, oh God, man, we were only young boys, we were only 13 at that time. The violence which I experienced, though, God, it was right young. I mean, you know, there was a boy get stabbed quite badly in a house I was in when I was a boy, and you're going to admit, it scared the shit out of me. It really did. I'm terrified. There was this guy lying, what I thought was dead. He didn't die, but I thought he was. So going back to my very first account with violence, I would have to say it was that. It might not guarantee it, but it's certainly the first I can remember it.
And was it a case of violence was necessary for survival, or did violence give you release tension?
It could definitely be a bit of both. You're either a lion or a lamb in this world, and unfortunately, lambs get picked on up here in the streets I grew up in. It wasn't fair. Poverty never is. So you better make a decision early in life, and that decision you better be committed to it. But also, of course, you see all this nonsense growing up, and you've got to be very vigilant at what your kids see, because I know the stuff I've seen growing up, and I'm very, very vigilant to the stuff my kids can see, because that turns into resentment and boils inside into pure rage. So I most definitely a bit of both.
Did the violence disrupt your school years?
Definitely. I got expelled twice. The first time I got expelled, I went for a teacher. I was dyslexic. I never learned to read or write really until I was in the jail. I was lazy as well. It wasn't just dyslexia. I was just lazy, and I hated school. I loved home economics, hated the rest of it. And a teacher he'd write hard on for us. He hated us for whatever reason, I don't know. And it just blew up one day. And we were in arts and crafts, and the big wooden ball and a soap. I took a swing. I missed him. I never went anywhere near him. Maybe didn't even intentionally try to hit him, but I took a swing at him, and it was just pure built up rage. And I get expelled for the first school for that. And then the second school, I'd been caught twice with a lot back in school, and they just went, you know what, enough's enough. Get him out of school, send him to college. They sent us to Cumbernauld College to do chefing, and I loved it. I loved being in. There was this pressure. It reminded you of some in the streets, but unlike school, the tutor was telling you to go fucking do this and do that. He was a normal chef at the end of the day, and screaming at you as such. I loved it all at a young age. And then at this point, our money got a lot better. My mum had made my stepdad for years now, and we were lucky enough he'd taken us to Mexico. But then they told the college, and the college put it down to 2 weeks absent and struck us off, which was a really bad kick in the teeth to us, because I really did get into it. And I think maybe, and I can't guarantee it, but maybe if I had told them and they kept us in college, maybe I would have stuck in it to chefing and went a different way, or maybe not. Maybe I'd have just went the way I went. But it's as I said, it wasn't all just violence. It was plenty of fun times. We used to go into Asda and Tesco, and remember, I'm big and certainly chubby these days, but I'm a lot taller. But I used to be a tiny wee guy, tiny skinny wee guy, and we used to just go into the drink aisle, and we'd always have this older woman with us, and we're loading in 40 ounces upon 40 ounces, and anybody with a brain in their head must have thought, well, we say 2 Wednesday, and we'd put Chris and all that on top, 2 right at the door with a trolley. We're doing that constantly now. We're getting selling a tall trolley for £200, probably maybe £400, £500, £600 worth of booze, and this old woman was taking all day long off us, and for there we were just doing our teenager day, buying. Ironically, you were selling booze to buy booze, but then you'd be buying drugs and all that as well, and having some of the best times ever. I'll remember the first time I took a sweetie, an Eckie. I swear to God, I've never had a kiss for God before, but I thought he just gave us a big sloppy winch. It was incredible.
How old were you, Paul?
I was just turned 13, and I took a half a sweetie, me and my pal, off a Mitsubishi. You can still remember it, a big double Mitsubishi. And I remember, we were too young obviously to get any dancings and all that, but my mate had a strobe light, and the strobe light was gone, and the music was gone, and then everything started slowing down. And I'm telling you, Sean, I was convinced I'd found a secret language in that song, and it was only talking to me. And I was sitting there like, it was brilliant. I can't turn around and say it wasn't, because I loved every minute of it.
Wow. What about then the gangs up there? How are they formed?
You know, the gangs are territorial, very, very territorial. So it's postcodes. There's been a lot of enforcement, a lot of people murdered up here for the only reason that they've got a different digit in a postcode for you have. So like, where we stay, it's cut up with bridges. So there was always a lot of fighting on the bridges. But we all share a common shopping centre. So on a Saturday, it was fucking downtown Baghdad up there. It was a bad day in Bosnia because you'd all the different gangs all gone to the one place, and it was it was murder. There was a few boys getting badly injured up there. Don't know what it's like now, to be honest. I don't really see a lot about young teams anymore. I think because of the internet and all that, they're all let's all hold hands and be friends now, you know what I mean? Whereas when we were younger, it was every tunnel had 50, 60 people in it, a ghetto blaster, and bottles of bucky and a bag of drugs. I mean, that was your youth.
And who was your first love?
Well, that is, you know, I had to tell my missus about it because obviously she had her first love as well. So we had a laugh about it. I had a wee lassie, Kelly, and she was stunning. Like, and she actually came on to me, and I was like, wow, didn't think I'd get in there, but happy days. I'll certainly no say no. And it developed, and it got serious. But, you know, I was 16, I wanted my cake and eat it. I was totally mad with it all the time, and I ended up running a bit with this wee thing. It took us into Cran Hill, don't get me wrong, and I had some of the best times of my life, but it wasn't I really go to jail and I sobered up completely. I realised what I'd lost, know what I mean? And you listen, this isn't a big sob story. I see her about, I think she got a Wayne and a new man and that, and I wish her all the best now. We were a couple of lanes, puppy love, with the folk we'd world with the boys, and we just loved it, but it was never going to last, know what I mean? But I we lassie called Kelly Heffernan was my first love.
And what was that first offence then that sent you on remand?
The very first time I ever get remanded. It was car theft, actually. It was, I say car theft. My wee mate John McMillan, John used to kid on he could drive. He couldn't drive for shit. I don't know if he's got his licence. I still don't know if he can drive that good. But back then it was terrible. And it was the worst winter you'd ever known. And we decided to steal a motor. And he'd opened the driver's door, and we couldn't get my door open, so I climbed in. I was sitting in the passenger seat, and he's sitting, and I'm wondering, what are you doing? What he was really doing was, I don't want to admit that I don't know shit about stealing motors. So we're messing about, and then just seen the shadow of somebody run by the back window. And now, no second I could have spun my head, falling out. The windows were getting put in, and we were getting dragged out, and one kicked in the middle of the street. I mean, there was neighbours, no that. They were knocking fuckers in the middle of the street. So they charged the two of us. It wasn't even car theft, it was reset because we didn't even start the engine. But I got a 7-day lie down for that. John, for some reason, got bail. And that was the very first time I was in. I remember I didn't even know how to roll up. Nothing. And, you know, obviously, I was 16, and to say you're not intimidated is bollocks, because you're not intimidated to go to jail, you're intimidated at the unknown. You don't know what's ahead of you. You think you're walking into the Sh00tings Redemption. And you're like, this is what's in front of me. You're in prison. It's not really like that. I mean, they're nowhere here anyway. I wouldn't like to have done any time in America, put it that way. But I remember the boys saying, showing us how to roll up and that, and then get through all the dog boxes in Berlin, tiny wee boxes, and you're like that, and there's about 6 of you stuck in it at one time. You're all struggling to breathe. And by the time you get to the hall, you just bang head down. And then before you know it, I was back out. But anything else, seeing you're in there, you're doubting every mistake you've made. You're not going to do this again. You're not going to do that again. I think I'll get amnesia, because as soon as you're out, you forget everything. It was like the first time I ever get stabbed. I remember lying in a hospital, and I was in the worst pain. Getting stabbed in the guts is everything they told you it was going to be. Believe me, it is horrible. And
take us through what happened, Paul.
So what happened there was, we were at a party one night in a close, up above where the house was, but I kicked off. Me and my mate at the time, Neil, were walking down the stairs, and we were halfway. My wee brother, my younger brother was with us. He was only 9 at the time. I was about 15, 16, he was 9. And this guy and his boy ran out and I shouting, come ahead. And I had a big butcher knife with a big bend on it. And I pulled it out and I ran back down. And his dad was the fattest bandit you've ever seen in your life. And I thought to myself, Jesus Christ, if he gets on top of me, I'm in serious soapy. And I stabbed his dad, and this wee wanker jumped out from behind him and he stabbed me in the guts. And then the dad's pulled a blade out and he stabbed it. And the two of them were standing there like that, as if it was a stab fest. My mate ran down, he saved my life without a shadow of a doubt. He cuddled into us, he got stabbed 4 times in the head. He actually almost lost his eye. And somebody had phoned the police, I don't know, but at this point, all our pals had heard the commotion. And the whole place just turned into a riot. And everybody's fighting. And I was lying, looking up, and the blood, by this point, was like the blood you see in a movie. It wasn't, it was spraying out. It was horrible. And I could feel myself drifting away. My mates kept shaking me. Come on, Paul, stay with us. And all I could remember was coldness of the close, the concrete underneath me. And I remember thinking to myself, I really don't want to die. And I was scared because there was no two ways about it. I was on the brink of death. And for a 16-year-old, that's traumatic. That actually was trauma that I didn't realise I was carrying with me until years later. And the ambulance finally came and I get rushed away. My pal get jailed. The boy done it, get jailed. My other pal get jailed, and the 3 of them all get put in white suits because the hospital says chances of him surviving are very slim. The event I obviously did pull through with the grace of God, and I mean it really was the grace of God. There was never a reason why I'm sitting here today, especially no through any other stuff either. And I've got a big scar that runs right up my stomach. I've got obviously the stab wound all in my stomach. I get 47 staples in my stomach and another 2 on the actual stab wound. I was in a hospital for 9 days in intensive care for 4 of them. And then for the next 6 weeks, I was hunchbacked. I couldn't straighten up. I couldn't walk. My bowels didn't really move right. It was a horrible experience. Complete. But, you know, Sean, I was doing that to other people as well. But I can't run about going, poor me, everybody stop and feel sorry for me. Because I was doing that and worse. And, you know, karma's a bitch at the end of the day. It'll catch up with you, me and everybody else.
Did being on the receiving end of it change you in any way?
I did, but what I didn't realise was just how much. You know, in the hospital, obviously, I was feeling fear and doubt and whatnot. And then I get out and I seen all my pals and all that, and everybody's patting you in the back and, let's see your scar. Before you know it, you forget all the promises you made to yourself, and you're just right back into routine, back to it. Back boozing, I mean, but it was, as years went on, that seriously started mentally affecting me, and I didn't realise until, I think, 2-3 years ago, I was actually suffering from PTSD. That was also, I mean, I've been shot as well, I've been slashed, as you can see, the scars across there, multiple ones there at the back of my head, and obviously I was stabbed another time after that again. So
how old?
When I get shot?
No, the time you got stabbed again. The next one.
Oh, the next one. Sorry, I was. That was the last time there. So that was in 2009. And what had actually happened there was, I was out with my pal. My pal just got out, and we were boozing all day, and it was in the hot sun, and we went down to the shop, and this guy came round and started arguing with my pal. And me and him getting into a fight. And I don't know what happened to my pal, but me and him getting into a fight. The boys pulled out a blade. And the first time he got us in the back with it. So I was like punching into him. And, what was that? What did you do there? And then he done me again. He done me a couple of times. And I was like, I know what he's doing. And at that point, I was starting to get woozy. I mean, he was sticking it right in. and then he kind of pushed us off, and he bolted, and my pals helped us down, and the blood was pouring at us. So we get down to next to where my ma's street was, and I'm saying, look, don't take me to my ma's, because I genuinely thought, I genuinely thought I was going to die. And last night, I didn't want my mother having a last memory of her son lying dying in her arms. That's no fair for any mother. And what had happened is a pal of mine, Ian, had actually seen his face one day, and he came running out with all sorts of towels and first aid, and he'd phoned the ambulance and that. I remember the police sitting, they were sitting laughing. You laugh at me all you want, but my mother was at that point. They shouldn't have done that. That was nasty. Now, I'd see if one of their sons had been stabbed, I wouldn't stand there them laughing. I don't know the guy, none of my business. And if they want to laugh at me, then laugh at me, but don't do it when they know fine well your mother can see, you know what I mean? Because I know she did see, because she actually brought it up to me, and I thought that's bad. But that was obviously that was the very last one. And the time before that, no, sorry, I tell you, the slashing was the last one. There's been that much, I'm just forgetting myself here. The slashing was the very last one. The time before that was the stabbing, which the two of them were very close to each other, and the time before that was the shooting. And the time
how old are you when you got shot?
21. Just turned 21. I was just...
What happened then?
So what basically happened was I was running about with a cut of serious coconuts in Glasgow, and we were doing a lot of work for them, and they were saying now, do this, do that. And obviously I can't go into a lot of details of what it was, but it was serious stuff. And what had happened is I'd heard the boy I was working with started bad mouthing us. He started, for whatever reason, I don't know, he started saying now he's this and he's that. I think it was a lot, it was jealousy. And me and him got into a fight once, and I put a machete to his throat, and he was shaking like a leaf. I never says that, and blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, fair enough. And forgot about it. And then for months and months, the wee rat was palling up to us, and the whole time he knew what he was planning. And he would, and we arsehole didn't pull the trigger himself, he wouldn't have dared. He paid boys, whoever it was, he paid a lot of money, and what had happened is they invited me down. At this point I was taking a lot of coke, a lot of coke, and you don't need to twist somebody's arm who's already full of coke to come down for more coke. You just need to say, there's the lines, come on down. And that's what they done. They knew fine well I'd went for a outline and sinker. And I went down the chapter door, and he opened the door, and the whole place was in darkness. And you know, showing that way, when you get that gut feeling, and you know, you should always trust your gut 100%, because I knew there was something amiss. I knew that, and I could see in his face he had a guilty look, and I've wandered in anyway. And one of them punched out in the side of the head, and one of them tried to stab us. But to say he tried to stab us is poor at best, because all he done was left a scratch across my chest. I mean, he could have easily have done it. And one of them sprayed that gas stuff in my eyes. That was horrendous. And then the other guy stepped out the hall, and he pointed the gun right to my head. And I remember thinking to myself, fuck me, man, I'm going to die in a strange house in Cranhill with nobody around us. None of my pals, because all my pals are up the stair actually. But I'm just going, that's me, I'm going to be dead before I know it. And I seen him shaking, and I've never been so relieved. See that 2-3 seconds, felt like days, him pointing the gun at my head, and then I seen his hand shaking, and I thought, he's not getting the balls to shoot me in the head anyway. And my stomach was so like, oh my god, it was like a weight. But then he went like that, bang, and blasted his, tried to shoot us in the stomach, and shot us in the top of the leg. And I've turned around and I'm shouting, shoot him again, he'll come back. And at that point I thought, fuck you, man. And I just burst at him, and I managed to get the keys, and I unlocked the door, and I fell into the clothes. One of them crowned us with a hatchet right at the head. All the blood was pouring down me by that point. So I was like pulling myself up the stairs, and I'm banging on my pal's door. And my pal's opened the door, and I've just fell in. I've said I've been shot. But they've obviously seen the blood and thought I've been shot in the head. And they phoned the ambulance. And within seconds, the armed response were everywhere. I mean, they were everywhere. Everybody that was in the house were told, he's only gone anywhere to researches for a firearm. I was lying in the hall, and I remember passing out a wee bit, and I kind of get woke with this fat wanker doing up with a rifle and poking in the side of the ear. But you doing? I'm the one that's been shot. Stand like that with your fingers to be searching for a firearm. Stand like that. They're all screaming at us. I was like, all right, kept doing a bit. But they searched us, found obviously no gun. Carted us after the hospital. The police came. What happened? Don't know, I fell. He says, you think you're funny? I really don't care about you. I says, that's my story, really. They says, you're telling me you fell and you landed in a bullet. I says, streets of Glasgow should really get cleaned up now, shouldn't they? He's like, I tell you what, you wee wanker, I'll be back tonight, you'll be telling me what happened. I said, aye, okay. As soon as he bolted, for my pal said, get up here with the motor, put my clothes on, right out, slipped out before, under the doctor's nose, into the motor. They tracked me down about 3 weeks later, but at that point, they knew that nothing was going to get says. I mean, for all the stuff that's ever happened to me, not one person has done day one in prison. And they never would, you know what I mean? I'm glad I'm away from it now, I'm certainly no. But nobody, it was just, we weren't built that way. We were told we wash our own dirty laundry, you know what I mean?
Honestly, Paul, I'm like gobsmacked. I've interviewed a lot of people, hard-hitting stories. We've just had 30 minutes of stabbings, shootings, slashings.
Yeah.
You've been through so much, and you're just at a young age of what you've described so far in this story.
Yep.
I'm just blown away by this because it's been constant. So look, we're going to calm it down a little bit right now before we go to the prison stories.
Yeah.
What was your mum and dad's response and reactions as you were going through this as a teenager, going into your early 20s? Did they try and get you out the lifestyle, or were you out of control, or what was going on at home? Yeah,
I was completely out of control. It broke my mother's heart. I remember the day I got sentenced, and he stood up. Actually, I was known back then as Paul Allen. Hayden called that name. It's my stepdad's name. My name is Paul Smith. I gave it to Polish years ago, and it kind of stuck. So he says, Paul Allen, I sent you to 6 years, and you'll be back here on Monday morning for a fresh trial. And I've seen the look on my ma's face. She was heartbroken. But my mother also knew, to a degree, she just had to leave me to it. It was sort of like describing like how a parent eventually has to leave somebody with a kid with a drug problem. They have to eventually just say he's going to do it or she's going to do it, whether we come down heavy or no, and it's going to kill us if it happens to them. But unfortunately, and I feel a lot of guilt for that these days, a lot of guilt. I didn't realise just how much stress I was putting my parents under, and it was bad. You know what I mean? It really was.
Yeah, and that's what we tell the young people who watch these videos. These gang members, they might say they've got your back, but your parents will have your back.
Oh, it does.
Lots of times when people go to prison, the gang members are trying to sleep with the girlfriends, and they're not helping them, and it's
exactly
all falls back on the parents.
That's exactly what I tell. I was any young man I'm ever speaking to, I say that. You might be the big cock of the walk now, but see the second you're in the jail, your best pal's going to be getting right into your wee missus, and by the time you come out, because they all turned their back on you, nobody's going to want to know you, because that's what does happen, especially with a long-term sentence.
Right, so let's go into the prison years now, and we'll just go back to when you said you was a young person going for the first time.
Yep.
And you thought it was going to be like Shawshank and all that kind of stuff. I think it was Bellini, you said.
That was, yeah.
Did you know people in there? Were you okay because of your associations from the streets?
When I first went in, didn't know a soul, but I was lucky. I get dubbed up with a wee guy called Harry McAllister, and I don't even know if he's still alive or not to this day, but wee Harry, it was already a bit seasoned by that point, and he kind of showed us the ropes and whatnot. He could have been an arsehole, but he was a good boy. And I was pals with Harry for years after that. It was more the second time I was in that I started getting to know faces, and then by the time I was on remand for the big one, I was seasoned basically myself. I mean, I was in my pals for Cumbernauld, but you also knew boys for this part of Glasgow, that part of Glasgow, all over the place, because you'd been in and out with them. Because at that point, Bellini was the only place in the west of Scotland that took young offenders on remand. So if you were at that age and you were remanded, you went to Berlin, regardless of, there was people for Peebles, which is, I don't even know what it is, it's a long way away from here.
When we wake up in the morning, we get out of bed and we start our day with Coro Snacks. Coro is a healthy snacks brand focusing on bringing additive-free, natural ingredients to their customers with fair prices in bulk packaging. They have everything from nut butters to free from baking ingredients to cooking essentials and, of course, the snacks. Oh, these Syrian pumpkin seeds from Coro are amazing. I have them on my cheese on toast every morning. You've been getting into them, Jen?
Yes, and all the health benefits it brings.
Look at that.
It's quite a lot. Quite a lot going on.
Lashings of them.
Right. Pop this in the oven then.
So what makes Coro special in comparison to others? Coro cares about sustainability. Their bulk packs save on packaging material compared to small single packs. For a 5% discount on Coro's products, use the code TRUECRIME with no space in between true and crime. The link to Coro's online shop is in the description box on YouTube. Thanks for supporting our sponsor.
In Berlin, it was a bit unfair for the band falling away, but you'll go to know each other. And then obviously, by the time I'd been on for the big one, then I was already part of the foundation myself.
Yeah, Johnny Boy Steele gave us a tour around Berlin and showed us where he'd escaped from and everything. So you said that there was, certain faces who, when you're a young person, you're going in the system, you hear about, the biggest time gangsters. Who were the big names back then?
Oh, without a doubt, Paul Ferris. I mean, Paul Ferris was at the top one. You had your Blake McDonald. You had Chamber McLean, who I knew personally. Chamber, a good guy. You had your McGoverns and all that. You had all your real villains at that point. But Paul Ferris always stood out down there. As I say, there wasn't any as it didn't know the name. There's still to this day, you still hear his name being whispered in pubs. But I mean, he's an old man now, isn't he? I'm not saying it's bad about him, but he is an older man now. But he still holds that sort of charisma and fear up here. So that was the sort of names that we all heard, and you seen all them with the paper, you seen them with the nice cars, and to be honest, you seen their names in the paper and all that as well, and you wanted to be that. I mean, why, if you're a pissant from anywhere, why not be somebody from somewhere? But it doesn't always work out like that. It certainly didn't work out like that for me.
Yeah, Paul Ferris is an absolute gentleman. All the comments on the podcast we've done with him has been nothing but love and respect.
Yeah, I could imagine it would be.
All right, so you going in then, Paul, as a young person.
Yep.
What were the conditions like back then? How many people were in a cell? What was the food like?
It was 2 to a cell. It was actually, we were in D Hall, which was the only hall that had been modernised. But C Hall through E Hall was all still your piss pots and your bare was. We had electricity and toilets and sinks. Not that bad compared to the way they were living. I mean, they were bad in their halls. We didn't experience that until we actually went up to Pullman, because Pullman was still behind. Hadn't been modernised. So, it wasn't really that bad in Berlin. But when you went up to Pullman, you were piss pots and 4 walls and the lights all went out at 11 o'clock, and you were a wee radio with a battery, and everybody was trying to wire their radios up to the light and blowing the light electricity in the hall all the time. So that was pretty rough. That was real experience. Before you're sitting there going, oh my God, this is real time now.
Going in for the first time, what was your first confrontation?
First confrontation, it was actually a guy who was trying to get wideways, and as I say, Harry jumped right in straight away, and he was like, fucking, wee Paul's alright. I was tiny back then, and wee Paul's alright, and it wasn't really much of a confrontation. It never went anywhere. But fights were always right around the corner. The first real thing I got into was the boy that had stabbed us when I'd been remanded. He was on remand for something else, And
Oh, so you run into him later.
ran into him, right? And when I mean ran into him, we physically almost bumped into each other. We didn't know, I'd just been remanded, I didn't know he was up there, and get brought in. And as I said, so it's like 2 levels, then a ceiling, 2 levels and a ceiling, instead of the big 4-level halls. That's the way D-Home Berlin is. So you went in, and there he was on the phone, and I thought, jackpot. And he'd actually, at this point, turned Queens against my wee pal Chris, and Chris get 8 years, I think, for attacking him. So he'd stood up in the High Court against him at this point, and there he is, swaggering about the hall as if he's Jack the Lad. And I had a couple of pals in there for Grand Hall, and I'd say to him, "You just fucking snitch, blah, blah, blah." So the next day in the shower, I mean, I don't know, I couldn't say exactly who done it, but somebody slashed him there to the arm. You know, these things happen, don't they?
Paul, you described so many stabbings earlier. Which stabbing had this guy done on you?
This was the very first one, the one in the stomach with him and his dad. Him and his dad, the very, very first one. And it's still to this one, the one that really carries weight with me. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because it's the first time. But that's where all the trauma eventually came from later on.
Did you ever run into the guy who did the one down your face?
No, never. My missus seen him. My missus phoned me once, and I was in the kitchen. I was at work, and she's like, "I can see that guy, blah, 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 he's right beside us. Basically, I'm going to say something." I said, "Don't." I says, "That's an animal, that rat." I says, "He would probably do to you." I said, "Just don't do it." I says, "Stay away from him." You know, you hear stories that he's about, and he's not fair here anyway, but you hear stories that about, and you hear these stories that he's back in jail, and you've heard even stories that he's dead. I really don't get that much thought as much as I used to, because you have to let all that go. You need to let it go, otherwise it will eat you alive.
That's a very important point right there. Resentment and anger and revenge, it can just eat you alive, can't it? When you should be concentrating on more positive things.
Exactly.
All right, exactly. So we're still back. You know, you're a young person in Barlini then, and what was the rest of the conditions like? You know, having a shower, things like that. The guards, brutality.
Well, the screws hated me, and I didn't realise my co-accused, the boy that we got to trial with, my pal, but we got to trial. His dad was a screw in Berlin, and they all blamed me. Even though Gibby was the one that stabbed the boy, they all blamed me.
What was that over? What was it over?
Why Gibby stabbed him.
Yeah.
But what happened is we were involved with this boy, moving a lot of stuff from him, and the boy was he was arrogant, and he was always having something to say, and he basically told my mother and my stepfather what I was up to, and they cracked up obviously, and I swore to them that I wouldn't do it again. And then a couple of weeks later he told them again that I was still doing it, I was still moving all this stuff for him. So I just went, enough's enough. And I phoned him, and me and my pal get in the car, and my pal got in behind him and stabbed him in the chest. I stabbed him a couple of times in the stomach, and we just left him basically die in the car. And I mean, I'm not proud of that. I'm not justifying it in any way. But back then, when you're young, you're full of anger. You can justify a lot of things a lot easier. If it was new, I would have just went, leave him to it. Who cares? But back then, it was all bravado again. It was all, no, I need to. He's smeared my name. I need to nip him. I need to do him. And that's what happened. And he almost died. I mean, we didn't miss him. As I says, we got charged, obviously, we'd been charged with attempted murder for that. And Gibby's dad was a screwing a-hole in Berlin. And Gibby was out in bail, but his dad was obviously telling all his pals, aye, it's him. He's got my boy into all this trouble. So as you can imagine, they hated me with a passion. For whatever reason, you know what I mean? They probably hated us for my attitude, I know, mind you. I was always had a right bad attitude towards authority.
How long was that first sentence you served?
The first biggie?
The very first sentence, the Bellini
Oh,
one.
the very first one. It was only a 4-month sentence. It was just a 4-month sentence. It was kind of just done me in 2 months. But by that point, by the time I was even sentenced for that, I was fully committed. What happened is I turned 16 in November at 01, and then by that point I'd been running about in Cranhill for probably about a year, and by March 01 I was remanded for the big one, and in that time that was a pending charge that had just come up, but because I was already on remand there was nothing else I could do but a prison sentence, so they just packed us off to Pullman for 2 months and then back down to Bellini for another 7 months in my remand.
All right, let's go through them slowly then. So the first sentence was 4 months.
Yep.
What was the next stint you did, and what was it, the conviction?
Well, the next one was the High Court. In between that, sorry, I get 60 days for what I can't remember, I think it was a breach of the peace or something, but just ran concurrent with the 4 months. But then I went to the High Court. I'd been on remand for 7.5 months. It was murder. There was nothing worse than sitting on remand every day, wondering what's going to happen. And then we finally got to Glasgow High, and we'd been charged with attempted murder, serious assault to permanent disfigurement, permanent endangerment of life ×2. So that was, they're 2 longer words for attempted murder, basically. So you're talking 3 attempted murders almost. Assault and robbery, armed robbery, and I was swear down to God Almighty. I done the rest of the charges, I really did, but I never robbed that shop. The boy who did it actually went on to rape a wee lassie.
No.
Aye, so the police, if they'd done their job right, he wouldn't have even been eligible for parole. And he got out on parole and raped a wee lassie. He's serving a life sentence for it just now. But I will swear on any stack of Bibles, I done every other charge, but I did not rob that shop. And I get convicted there and get 4 years for a crime I never done.
Did it go to trial?
Well, what had happened is the QCs all came down, Queen's Council, and they basically says to everybody, look, whatever Paul gets, half it, and that's your sentence. Paul's going away and ain't coming back. And my QC says to us, he says, you know, I've got to be honest with you, Paul, I don't think you realise how much trouble you're in. I'm thinking maybe 4 year tops. And he turns around and he says, you're looking at 15 years. I thought, Jesus Christ, I'm only 16 myself. And so they says, look, they're offering a deal, and we suggest you all take it. He said, because it's the only way, Paul, that you can get out of this without really doing serious time. So we'd all pled to, what they'd done is there was 16 odd charges in the indictment, and what they'd done is they broke them up between 4 days. So, but I said to them, I'm not pleading guilty to this. I'm not pleading guilty to this robbery. I had nothing to do with it. I'm taking that to trial. So they basically says, Mr. Gibb, stand up. Says Craig Gibb, you've been out in bail. You've not committed any offences. This was your first offence, and basically we can see that you're a pillar of the community. That being said, if you think you're walking out of here today with anything but a custodial sentence, you're sadly wrong. 4 years. And I'm sitting like that beside him. I'm going, oh no, I'm not going to. He's just going to turn around and send me to the guillotine here. And he says, Mr. Smith, you're 16 years old. You're younger than anybody. And you've got the most severe charges out of everybody. And if you think for a second that you're going to be looked at favourably because your age, you're sadly mistaken. He says, my only regret is I wanted to sentence you at least 12 years today. He says, but because you've got a separate trial starting on Monday, I cannot, but through sentencing guidelines, sentence you to any more than I'm giving you just now. He says, I sentence you to 6 years, and I'm going to be recommending the parole board deny you your parole because I feel you should serve every day. Okay, fair enough. It's a bit harsh, but that's it. He says, and obviously you'll be back here on Monday morning for your trial, your fresh trial to start. The other one get 2 years, and the other one get 7 years. I made Jay. And what had happened is I went on trial, and there was, honestly, Sean, there was nothing. For one, the guy was a big, tall, skinny guy with black hair. This was the description that the shopkeeper gave, with a scar. Now, I know I've got scars here, but at the time I never, across his nose, no scar, and a funny walk. My QC even had me walking about the dock to show, and the jury still returned a guilty verdict. Couldn't believe it. So even the judge was surprised with the evidence, and he sentenced me to 4 years concurrent, and I was so happy. And then obviously that was, if I was going to write a book, which I'm planning to do, that chapter would definitely be called The Party's Over, because that was the end of the madness to a degree. Then it was a prison time, then it was coming home.
What was it like going into prison that time?
You know, we'd already been on a man for 7 months at that point, so we were already used to it. See, in a lot of ways, I've got to be honest, a lot of ways I was kind of happy, because I was heading for a concrete box or a wooden one. I was no two ways about it. I was going to murder somebody, or somebody was going to murder me. There was so much chaos. I was involved in so much chaos in Cumbernauld and Glasgow. I was just running riot everywhere. You know, if it gets to a point where you just want to go, I can't breathe anymore. I need. And so when they shut the door and I knew that all the madness, at least that part of my life was over. I wouldn't say happy, because I wasn't happy, but I would definitely say I was relieved.
It's like when people on the run sometimes, and then they finally get arrested, and there's like a sense of comfort, isn't it? That they're not looking over the shoulder anymore.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example. That's exactly what it was like.
What was your routine in prison at this point?
You know, routine is, I despise prison for us, because to this day, I still wake up at 6 to 6 a.m. regardless. I can come in for work at 11, 12, and I'll still wake up at 6, and that was drummed into us through that. You would hear the keys about 6:30 to 6:30. As soon as you heard the keys, your eyes would open. Then the doors would open about 7:10. You'd get your dry rice, your Rice Krispies, and your wee pint of milk. And then they would let out people. There was courts, liberation. They would. It was funny, see, when you were in Berlin, we used to call it the Green Mile. Everybody going for a methadone. And they would shout up, "Oh, methadone!" And you would just see rows and rows and rows of people, and the whole hall would clear. So then, as soon as you got all that dealt with, then you were locked back up. And, you know, then the sheds, you were took into the sheds, which is the work placement. And you would sit about doing nothing down there all day. It was boring. Yeah. It's all right if you were in the cookhouse. I went into the cookhouse relatively early. But then I wasn't long before I was getting into chaos. Actually, I always remember it was when I first went into Pullman, sentenced. I was in the Dublboston. I wasn't doing it. I was talking to my pal, and I screwed up the door. He's like, "You ain't you're a fucking gangster, didn't you?" I was like, "No, you told me." And then the two pals came here, and they're right in my face like that. And, you know, it was intimidating. But I think for that, because, see, the screws in Pullman encouraged bullying. They encouraged it. They encouraged people to divide into separate cliques, because it made their life easier. If everybody's a together, they only are our enemies, and Pullman was bad for it. It was only jail that was really bad for it. And I think that was where all the resentment towards the screws came from. And, you know, I battled them for years. I mean, there was people a lot worse than me, without a doubt, but I had a lot of fun times. I know I can't say it was all, because there was something funny about. They would all come in with a full riot gear, and after you get took to the seg unit and stripped and knocked about, you were just lying there. It was adrenaline. I think it would make you giggle. You know what I mean?
Can you remember the first time they came in like that on you, and what you'd done to cause it?
First time I remember it all too well, and I'd done nothing. What had happened was we were put in where was it? It was a hall called Alec Alley. Why was it? That's the name of some place in Scotland, apparently. But anyway, boy next door to me had smashed his Peter up in his cell, and they've came to the wrong door, and I was sitting on my seat, minding my own business, reading about. The door flew open, shield in, bang. The only grin until they realised that, in fact, my Peter was fine, and then they just got up, out, and right into the other guy who was smashing up. That was the very first time. That was just a mistake in their half, but God almighty knocked the wind right out of me. It was like a freight train coming at you. And you don't get a chance to say you get your iron door, mate, before you know you're pinned up against the wall and can't breathe. So, and then obviously they're full helmets, and they've always got to make a show and dance here. Now they hit the shield, the bat and all that to make noise. It's all just the way they're probably trained to do that, I'd imagine, because they do it in every jail.
What was the next time they came in?
The next time they came in, actually, was smashing up the screws. We were in Northwing, and they were horrible. They were animals, and I just did enough of it, and I smashed myself up, and they came charging in, and I thought this time I'll run at them. Didn't make any difference, believe me. It was just like kind of, and that was it. I'm done with. And plus, you got a couple of slaps for that and all. Dragged in the seg unit. Time after that, actually, was what had happened was a boy get slashed, and I was just brushing my teeth beside the boy. And they didn't actually they came with a gear on, but they didn't put charges or anything. And they just took me, the boy I was dubbed up with, and the two other boys, because it was about 6 years, and one has obviously done it. It was a bit like playing Cluedo. Now, somebody done it, nobody's saying it, and the boy was lying slashed. Obviously, we know he'd done it, and we all get took down to the seg unit. But the whole thing just kind of went away. The boy never says it, and that was it. That used to happen all the time in Pullman. Somebody would get slashed, nobody's seen it, and you heard nothing. It was like, there was a big investigation for about 10 minutes. Never met screws so lazy in your life as they were up there. They couldn't be bothered. They just pick you up, take you to sick bay, and tell you to shut up. If you want to press charges, they'll have to do something, but if no, they're happy to get back to sitting in their fat arse.
How many times did the goon squad come in on you?
Over the years, oh God, a few times, believe me. The worst one was up in Sh00tings. We were all drinking hooch, homemade alcohol. Oh my God, I'll tell you, Sean, never ever see, if you see somebody even drinking that, walking their way, it's horrible. The hangover is, you actually get a hangover when you're still drunk. It's kind of weird, that stuff. You're right, and you just can't make it right. But we're all tanning it, and somebody came out with the idea, let's put our telly through the office window. I mean, we're all young, all blazing, no, that's a great idea, that's a good laugh. Picked the telly up, way down there, fuck you right through the office window. But I actually seen it played back to us in court, and I was no denying, the cameras were spot on who done it, and it was obviously me. And we all ran back in. It was 3 years, me, boy Tony, and our boy Alan, and we barricaded the door. Knocked fucking the door. We're in the back. We're all young and stupid. And we're singing, "You keep on knocking, but you can't come in." And they took the hinges off. They didn't find that very funny. What a beating they gave us. Right, I mean, the flexed it. And I've got a bad back to this day. The two of them were holding it down with a shield in both ends, and the other one was battering into my back. And I'm shooting, "You're going to cripple me, you animal." I'm shouting, "Who gives that effing hell?" My mate, his eyes split wide open there. Mother mate got 2 broken fingers. The guy, that was a savage beating he gave us. But as what it is, it was still worth it to even sing that song I wanted them, because they were raging. They were, "We'll fucking tell you who, we'll get in there and we'll see you." And we were all screaming in the background, singing, and think we're funny. And then of course they took the hinges off the door. Just come in.
Was that the worst? Was that the worst injury you ever got from the guards?
I would say so. I would say so. I mean, the rest of it was probably just. Berlin, one time, a screw booted us in the head while I was getting carted. I don't know who done it, but I was about. And it wasn't even all that. It was just made a side kick. It wasn't a full penalty kick. Well, I was turkeyed up at that point, so you could have easily have done it. But I think that was probably the worst one was up in Sh00tings, definitely.
Did you see any snitches or sex offenders get dealt with?
No, the sex offenders were, well, one time in Pullman, and it's my old time regret, because I truly believe the wee guy's innocent. Luke Mitchell, if you've heard who that is, I truly believe.
We've had people on the podcast about Luke Mitchell. We think he's innocent as well.
Well, when he first got brought into Pullman, we were there obviously in 2003, and he used to get took about with 4 screws. And, you know, he looked the part, he had the long hair, the kind of evilly look about him. But to judge somebody is terrible. But when you're young, you're reading in the papers, you're thinking, look what this animal done. And I spat in him one day. It used to be the mile, they called it, and all the holes in Poland were connected onto this big long corridor. It took you to the visit room. And he was going to the visit, and we were coming out of PT. And I spat him, and I swear to God, if I could ever see that boy, I would genuinely try and apologise, because I've carried that guilt for years. And see the mayor, you see about that boy now, there's no 2 ways about it. Free out Mitchell.
Yeah, and he's still inside. It's really sad, isn't it?
It's very sad, very sad. You know, I think
Well,
sorry, what?
You said, so we did a 4 months, and then we did a few more months, and now you got a 4-year one. By the end of this 4-year one, where was your mind at, and how old were you?
Well, it was 6 years. I served 4 years out here.
Yeah.
I was 21 when I got out. 16 when I was 21 when I got out, and just turning 21. But you know, my mind was still on the streets. It was still. I was too young. It was still wanting to make a name, and that's how I ended up back inside within 2 months. I'd been caught by a lot back, and then when it hit with 4 years for possession of a knife, I thought, no way, enough's enough with this. But you know, it was in that time, and when I was out, I'd been shot, hit with a hatchet, sprayed with CS gas. I mean, granted, all happened in one night, but still, I'd get into some serious stuff and all. I mean, this is a guy, I was only out. I'd actually done something to somebody and went to see my pro officer later that day. So I deserved to be back in prison. I was fucking a wee animal still.
How did they catch you that time?
What had actually happened is I was down seeing this wee bird, and we were walking along, and the police had walked past us, and she's like, oh, I've got something on it. She had a bit of coke in her pocket. She went, I'm going to go this way. And what had happened is the police had seen me and buckled back round. The path kind of went round the way. You could come back. And then there was more police. I was walking down the hill, and I seen them coming towards us. I've let it turn to run, and there was 2 police behind us. I was nowhere I could really go. I came out, like, how are you doing? Searched us for the lot back. What's your name? I says, Alan Patterson. I says, where are you from, Alan? I said, 239 Bellrock Street. I think I hope 239 Bellrock Street didn't even exist. It was knocked down. It used to be an old street in Tranhill, and clearly I'm no Alan Patterson. So they took us out to the police station. That kept saying, what's your name again? He says, Alan Patterson. He says, do you want to spell it? I said, you take the piss. He says, right, okay. Charlie booked us in under Alan Patterson. He says, you any previous conviction? No, never. You know, I used to use this wee guy's name. I hated him growing up. And the wee guy's probably did 60 years for a minute of times I've used his name. I hope he's not, but they put us in a police station. They're like, listen, you've no previous convictions. You'll probably be in a couple of hours. I'm like, yes, jackpot. An hour and a half later, I opened the door. Like, how you doing, Paul? Like, you talk about Paul. Like, still trying to tell us your name's Alan Patterson. I says, aye. He says, come here. Took us into HR's desk for the computer. He says, you think Paul Smith looks fucking double Alan Patterson looks a double Paul Smith? I says, shut up, man, just take it back. He says, you're getting charged with perverting the course of justice as well. I says, right, okay. And then straight away remanded again. And what had actually happened was, when the parole board up here's a joke, they had sent my man, they phoned my man with a pure angry tone, like, tell your son we've applied for a warrant for his arrest because he's not been to see us in months. My mum was like, are you taking the mickey? My son's been in prison for the last 4 months. Like, well, nobody told us. So your parole officer didn't even know that I was back in prison, that I'd been recalled. And that's what happened. I get 42 months consent with 9 months that I had left in my recall. It was terrible, the sentence. And I'd served just under 2 years of it. So all in 7.5 years. When I got out that time, my uncle Vinny picked us up, and you know, everybody laughed when I said I'm going straight. Aye. So yeah, I said, look, Vinny, I said, I don't want to be in crime anymore. I don't want involved in it. I want to just have a peaceful life and start getting into chefing. He says, right, okay, I believe you. And you know, I proved them all wrong, and I proved myself right.
So how old were you when you got out from that one?
24.
And what happened during that one?
Well, during that one, it was again the worst fight I've ever been in. A guy called Brian.
Over what?
When I was inside, I got into the worst fight that I'd ever been in with a guy called Brian. And I mean, this guy was a monster. And the two were fighting, and the screws had locked us in the cell. And I was stabbing him in the head with a coffee cup.
Hold on a sec. Hold on, let's set the scene for this one, Paul.
Okay.
What you said he was a monster. What did he look like? And what was the beef over first?
Right, so what basically happened, the beef was over. Again, hooch. Maybe I shouldn't drink it, but this time it was, we were drinking hooch and a screws came out and an argument. It was me actually caused the argument, and I turned around and nutted the screw, and Big Brian's came out and the two of us battered the screw, and we get flung into his cell. The door get locked, and the men, because we were drunk, we started arguing with each other, and then he's just fucking turned around, he had horns like birds. He was like that. I was this wee skinny guy, and he got in tappy and he strangled us. And I'm thinking, I'm not fucking going to die here, you know what I mean? And I smashed him with a coffee jar, and it smashed him, stabbed him in the head with it, and he still just was strangling tighter and tighter. I thought, this is serious. And I don't know what happened, but my tongue got hoofed into. I get 14 stitches. My tongue was hanging, and the blood was pouring out. It was disgusting. And the boy Graham Lennox ended up running down to the screw and saying, "Listen, they're going to kill each other in there. You better get that door opened." And eventually they had to come in, and they carted him to the SEG unit, and they carted me to the medical unit. And then I was trying to fight with him down there because I was still a bit drunk. And they took us to Cross Hill Hospital. It's Crosswood Hospital, or whatever it's called. It's in Kilmarnock anyway. And they had to sew my tongue and all that back up. And they took us, that was it. We were in the SEG unit, and Brian get moved to Sh00tings, and I was down there for, Graham get back up the hole, and I was down there for about 4 months, and then back up, and then I get into another occasion with a screw. I was only up there. I hated that jail. I hated everything about it. As I say, they were running like the SPS. They were a bunch of morons, for the lack of a better word, that used to work in the Tesco and all that, and suddenly they're working with dangerous criminals, and it just should have never happened. It was badly planned, and actually it's starting to catch on, because we've now got this Addiewell jail up here, which I've never been in, but when you read the papers, that's just as bad. And I wanted to do it there, and I was willing to do it, and start. No jail in Scotland was taking us at this point. They were all, we've had enough of them, we've had them. Sh00tings was saying it, Kilmarnock was, Greenock I'd already been in. They'd been kicked out of Greenock, Berlin, and obviously I was too young, too old for Pullman. And there was a boy that I was beefing with in Glencoe. He'd actually civil charged me and my pal, charged with assault, so we couldn't go there. And eventually they were stuck with us. But I was up the hole for about a week, and I ended up getting in an argument with another screw and carted back down. And that was it. I finished my sentence in the SEG unit. I've been in the SEG unit for 8 months, and they just opened the door and says, "See you later." That was it. Which was quite hard.
What was it like in the SEG?
You know, SEG units, everything it says in the tin, you're in there. And, I mean, SEG units used to be, where it used to just be like a police station. If you've ever been in a police station, you've got the concrete step where your bed, your mattress would go, and 4 was. I mean, only difference in your metal toilet and your metal sink. Nowadays, they've put actual high beds in it, and you've got electricity. I mean, nowadays, SEG units, you can get a telly if you're good enough in the SEG for 3 weeks. But it didn't used to be like, I used to be down there, and you know, you used to talk to yourself and all that, because loneliness can really get on top of you, and the human body, the human brain's not developed to cope with the loneliness that you feel in a segregation unit. And there's no truth of saying that the quietness is deafening. Silence is deafening, or whatever it may be.
What was your routine in the SEG?
Up in the morning, jogging the spot, wee bit of press ups, whatever. If you were, hopefully you had a good book, crack into a good book. Then you were entitled to 1 shower a day, 1 hour of exercise. But you remember your exercise is with all the boys. They open the door, they handcuff you, they take you around into a pen yourself, just like an animal, you know what I mean? And I'm cuff you. And then that would be it. You know, that was, and you would walk anti-clockwise. Every jail, especially in Britain, everybody walks that way, and I don't know why. And it's always bugged me that. I used to remember sitting in exercise, you're looking at boys saying, why is every jail do that? Apparently they do down south as well. So you ever get somebody that can answer that, please give us a text, because that drives me nuts, that question, to this day. So that was
there any, during your prison years then, did you come across any really high-profile cases like killers or anything like that?
Oh, most definitely. It was like, when I was up in Shorts, it was like all lady killers. They were on for doing their rice. And, you know, sometimes I feel like choke my own missus, but I don't know if I would go as far as to killing, what I mean. These were all, there was a guy, Doogie, and he was totally off his rocker, and he was next door to me. And what he'd actually done, he killed his wife, and he had her at a dinner table every day, and he was shouting at her because she wasn't eating her dinner. The poor woman sat there dead for 5 days. So he was doing a life sentence. And I remember playing my music one day, and it was on the door. And I've opened it, he's stunner. Turn that fucking music down. Hey, bother me. I don't think I'll turn it on again, to be honest with you. Shots had some right scary people, and but you know, had some real villains up there and all. It was a boy for birthday, Essex, and the stories he told you about the drug scene was just, it was like, these are, so wow, you honestly live that life, mate. He says, honestly, he says, but you know, he says, like you, I've not got a pot to piss in.
So were you in your head then? How were you adjusting for getting released on this stretch?
You know, it was it's funny. The first time I was getting released, started doubting I even wanted to get out. The closer it was getting. And I used to think I was weird. Like, where the hell would they want to get out? But see, you speak to a lot of long-termers, a lot of them will say that because it's the fear. Your world's that small, has been for years, and with a one step of the fence, it turns into the world we're staying in now, where you've got bills, kids, and all the fun joys about what. So, you know, it was, the first time was really scary, and even the second time, I'd still dead edgy around people. Couldn't feel comfortable when I got out. Didn't trust a lot of people, and again I saw all things that come from serving long-term sentences. It does psychologically mess with you.
And then when you got released on this one, was there anybody waiting for you?
Well, that was my uncle was waiting for his man. My mother and that was up, and I actually met my missus the first night I got out.
Oh wow!
Aye, honest to God, it's what had actually happened is my pal, no, I knew who she was and all, but I never knew like that. We were in the pub and she came down, says, you want me to buy you a drink? She's like, I can buy my own drink. Buy your own drink, you're stuck up bitch with it. I can't know what I mean, it's not awful. And you know, a couple of drinks later we got talking and that, and we exchanged the numbers and get a wee kiss off her that night and that else, just a wee kiss, and then it went for there, and that's to this day. I've got 2 kids with her.
Oh, congratulations, man.
Thank you very much. We're very happy, you know what I mean? She was a lot to do with me changing my life a lot. I mean, I was planning on changing anyway, but she helped through the tough times.
So you'd say the power of the love of a good woman helped you settle down.
Exactly, you know what I mean? So it must work in mysterious ways because it can work.
Were there any temptations when you got out where you almost went back to it?
Oh, aye, definitely. Especially when that happened. I really, I mean, that happened was an argument broke out and the guys got out a bottle and he thought I hit me with a bottle. I never hit me with a bottle. He's pulled a Stanley out and he's like, I am going to take the face off you. And he came out and I punched him in his arse. But, you know, when I came out, I was all pulled in, but I was strong. Punched him right in his arse. But he was full of jellies, temazepam. So he was like, they wobble things, if you remember the veins. As soon as he came down, he came right back up. Well, you're taking the piss. Punched him in his arse again. And this time he's trying to get up and I booted on the side. I said, stay down, you prick. And just as that, he's bird walked round. I knew he's bird to Cranhill. She really, this is a lassie who really did stab people, especially guys. She was bonkers. And Stacey, my missus, was stunning. And he shouted, effing stab back, cow. And I spun round and I says, you'll stab nobody. As soon as that's happened, he's jumped up, he's pulled the Stanley out, he's caught me for it there. That was a hospital done that, but he caught me for it there in a straight line. And I wasn't sure what I said, what did you do there? He caught me for there, run through here, and run. I said, right, we're on. I'm in Tapia, on him. He caught me the one in the back of the head, three in the back of the head, and I'm strangling him. I was strangling the life of him, and the blood was pouring at him. And I knew deep down that was no paper cut. I mean, and what was happening was my grip on him was starting to get looser and looser, and I was starting to get woozier and woozier. And just as that, the police must have appeared, and I've heard them. I said, get away before they come, hurry up. The police came, and they're like, what happened to you? I says, usual, I fell. He says, your cheek's on your shoulder. Take it or leave it, I says. At this point, I'm not really grasping just how much bad this was. And my missus happened to show us it, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. And that was a bad, you know, that thing made me mentally, because even to this day, you still see people looking and all that. And usually for myself, I don't bother my arse, but when I'm with my kids, you know, it's not right, Sean. They're kids, they shouldn't need to know about that. And in fact, they actually asked what happened, and I told them I was in a car crash and I never wore my seatbelt. So always remember make your seatbelt, and I tell the pals that as well. So, you know, let the message get through with them and wear their seatbelt all the time.
Were there any other situations after you got out that got out of control?
No, I mean, there was a couple of things people try to pull you back into it and all that, but you know, you've just got to have a backbone to just say, well, I'm not interested. I've done my time. Whoever I used when I was in, you will not seen this. You wouldn't care. Don't start giving it a big I am now. I mean, but you know, after a while, people start to forget about you and they move on to the next one. They can parasite on it. And even the police, when they first got out, they were hell. Middle of shopping centre, starfish, searching us, making it pure, widely known they're searching us for a knife. And you're like, just get a grip, know what I mean? After a while, they get bored of it and all. They're a business at the end of the day. They've got to justify why they keep picking on the one person. If they've got no reason to justify it, they've got to move on. And I've never gave them a reason ever since I came in. So they just moved on. And obviously then I get into chefing. So I was in the kitchen all the time anyway.
How old were you when you got into chefing?
I got out and I was skint, didn't have a job. My stepdad got into the building trade. So I done 5 years in the building trade, so that took us up to 29. Done 5 years with Miller Homes, just a labourer. But, you know, it was good. And I went to my work every day, and I paid at the end of the week. And you go to learn how to associate like a real guy or a real worker and be one of, and you'd listen to them on the banter in building trades is tremendous. Now there's some of the funniest people in the world, and you've just got to learn to take a joke and all that, which was good for me because I came out with a chip on my shoulder the size of the rock of Gibraltar, and good that people, they taught us that they were only having a laugh, they weren't taking the piss. They were taking the piss, but they weren't taking the piss at you, whereas before that you would get the back up and all that, what you're saying, but now you just learn to laugh at it, and that helped us in the kitchen and all. And after 5 years I went to college, but I was starting to get a bit older so at this point, so what the tutor said, he said, you're better off getting into the kitchen as well as college. So I was getting up in the morning. My missus was in college as well, same college, she was doing hairdressing, and the two kids were in the nursery of the college. So we were getting up at 7, getting them ready, taking them to nursery. I was going to class, she was going to class, and then right after class I was going right in the bus, right into Glasgow, right into the hotel, and then there to 10, 11 at night. And it was just day after day after day. But you know, it molds you, and you soon pick up with you were a disaster, and then you get a wee bit better. And some people still will watch us and go, you're still a fucking disaster. You know, that's all right, that's fair enough. But kitchens were great. Kitchens, some of the funniest times I think I've ever had. Or the madness with the boozing and all that. I mean, there's a reason. Us yes are mad alkies, and you're not just hardcore drinkers. You're in that kitchen all day. You're coming out, you go straight to the boozers. But we were having boozing all that in the kitchen. Walk in, fridge. If you went in, we the ovens were never used. You opened them, there was bottles of whiskey and cases of Stella and all that, and you just sit half a day getting blazing. It was fantastic. Time service came, you're all like that. Oh, you do it, no, you do it.
Do you think, when it sounds like that some of the violence was associated with drugs and alcohol?
Yeah.
How have you managed to get away from that then? Because if you're getting blitzed, aren't you at risk of doing something?
Well, it was everything has to come to an end. And even all the fun times in the kitchen and all that, I was starting to get to the point I was coming in drunk every night and hungover every day. And I just thought, nah, enough's enough. And I started having to look at why I was drinking and why I was doing everything. And then I went to see a psychologist, and they helped us realise that I was carrying PTSD. And I generally thought only soldiers got that. I really did. And I know it's a cliche, people say it, but I generally thought, when she says that, she says, I've never been to war before. She says, you've probably seen more violence in some soldiers. She went, it's no soldiers anyway. She went, your brain doesn't dictate if you've got a uniform on or not. And it was very true. So, you learn coping mechanisms and whatnot. And I wasn't, I don't know if it's severe, but I did enough that it was making us abuse substances to self-medicate. And now that I'm not doing that, I'm happy. I'm mentally happy. I'm physically, well, I'm still physically a fat bastard, but that's another story. But I'm physically where I want to be in life, and it's good. It might have sounded like fun and all that, but it's a lot of it does bring up even. I mean, to tell you what, I've been trying to write a book for going on a year now. I'm still starting page 1 because every time I go to type it, I need to start thinking about all this stuff again, and I just do that and shut the computer. I can't bring myself to face it. So, listen, a lot of it was mental and a lot of it was even fun. But I carry the scars physically and mentally now. And I've had to learn to deal with all that before it swallowed me whole.
I think you've hit an important note here. I definitely think you should write a book because you've lived through some of the most insane stuff I've ever heard. And there's so many people out there struggling with alcohol. And the people who get really addicted have usually been through some kind of trauma, childhood trauma. And it's this constant cycle then of self-medication for the trauma, but the alcohol kind of causes them to trash their lives or get into bad situations. And the cycle, it's like they want to end it and they're determined to end it, but they can't figure out how to end it. What advice would you give to those people?
Listen, see, at the end of the day, I understand where trauma comes from, and I understand how easy it is to medicate it. But I promise you, all that does is mask over it, and what happens is it pushes it down deeper and deeper. Your body can only take so much, and eventually it's going to explode. So on top of all that, then you've got the dangers of addiction, you've got the dangers of alcohol misuse and whatnot. If you've got problems like that, go and see somebody. This is a new day and age, this isn't like it used to be where there was a stigma to it. Nowadays, everybody in a dog's going to see some sort of therapist. There's nothing wrong with seeing them. And I tell you what, it just might help you. Or maybe even do yoga. I mean, I tried yoga years ago. I was too unfit for it. But you see, they think my mental states were really, really at peace. Whatever you need to do to help you, do it. Don't be scared of it. Because I'm telling you, drinking pills is never an answer. It's not going to help you if you're dealing with something traumatic. It's just going to make you dependent on that as well.
Yeah, because I've had therapy. I've had a lot of different therapists, and I found one that I really clicked with. And did you find a good therapist right away, or did you have to try different ones?
No, right away. The first one I met, she was arrogant, and I just didn't trust her from the get-go. And to be honest, I just started asking about to annoy her because she wasn't giving us any answers. But then I started seeing a guy, and he was good, you know what I mean? I've not seen him in a while, actually. The stuff he told us, and it just even in a couple of sessions, it helped.
How many sessions did you have?
Yeah, maybe about 20 odd on. So that's you're talking like 20 weeks, which is it's a long time, 1 a week.
And did he spend a lot of time going over your childhood, or was it more like helping you at your thinking processes?
What they done is they make you bring it up, so they want to go straight to this, that, and the next. They'll make you start talking about stuff, and just like this podcast, you start talking about one thing, and it just snowballs, and before you know it, you've told them stuff that you didn't think you would ever tell a living soul.
And did you feel like you were releasing that tension by telling him?
Most definitely. It's coming out can be quite emotional. Really can. You've been holding on to stuff that you didn't even realise you're holding on to. It's here a couple of days later. It feels honestly like a physical weight coming off of you. But on the other hand, some of it can be you bring it to the surface, and then you've got to deal with it. But it's always better to deal with it and just get it out.
Appreciate your honesty with that, Paul, because it's so inspirational for people who are struggling to hear that someone's gone through it themselves. You were really in the deep end of violence and addiction with alcohol, and now you've come through it. We're at the point, you've got a good family life.
Yep.
You're setting out to write your book, and it sounds like you're living a good life these days.
It certainly is. I mean, I could always help an offer that could help us get by page 1 of my book, but apart from that, you better believe I'm happy where I'm at.
And is there any stories or anything you think you've left out that you'd like to talk about?
It's not I think as much. I don't know if there's anything else you want to know. Maybe if there's anything else you want to ask.
You said to me before this interview you had a few questions to ask me about Sammy the Bull.
Aye. So when I watched your, I'm a big Sammy the Bull fan. I love his podcast. I've got to be honest now. Granted, the guy was a snitch and he done what he done, but that's who cares what happened in New York? I stay in Scotland. I like his podcast, I like his stories. But then I heard that you were messing about and you ended up going up against him. I thought, Jesus Christ, it was legit from it.
So what happened was I established an ecstasy ring in Arizona.
Yep.
In like the 96, 97 around then, and I had the SWAT team came May 16th, 2002, but we had like the local scene locked down. And then in the late 1990s, a new kind of ecstasy ring formed, and we didn't know who they were. But we ended up finding out that a lot of them were throwing Sammy the Bull's name around. Let's put it out. That's how we found they were.
Yeah.
But now I've just done a 90-minute documentary for Discovery Channel with Sammy the Bull and his family, and they filmed me and my family. And what I've learned is that Sammy the Bull, his involvement in the ecstasy ring was very minimal. He was at home and he put money into it for his son. But it was the ecstasy ring was actually run by a guy called Mike Papa.
I've seen that.
Yeah, he brought in Sammy the Bull's son, Gerard Gravano, who, me and Wildman ended up meeting him in Towers Jail in Arizona. That was the first time we met him. But yeah, so we ended up in competition with them. And one of the stories in this documentary is the night that Gerard tried to kidnap me with an armed crew, and he was going to take me out to the desert. So that's all coming out this summer in the Discovery documentary. Yeah.
Oh, young bandit country there, son. No, I mean, I'm going to take you to the desert. Oh, I didn't
like the Wild West. Arizona's like the Wild West still.
Aye, definitely. It's see your pal Wildman. Is he really that Coco Bananas?
Well, he was. He lived it so hard and wild that he died just about 2 years ago from multiple organ failure. But he chose that lifestyle. People say it's a waste of life, but it's not. He was the Aryan Brotherhood offered him the full membership. The Hells Angels invited him to their clubhouses. The Mexican cartel were running him around in Mexico in military jeeps when I went down there. He lived a hell of a life, but the lesson is for the young people, Wildman, he always did more drugs than anybody. Sometimes he'd stay up for 2 weeks at a time, smoking meth, smoking crack, and he really damaged his heart.
Without a doubt.
And even when he got released, he did manage to get it down to just weed and alcohol, but the alcohol was still pretty significant. And, you know, no doubt all that over the years contributed to him dying when he was in his 40s.
Of course, listen, it's at the end of the day, though, it still hurts just as much. When a friend or not, I've had friends as well that's died, and it does it. It leaves a sting. It's hard to go away. So my sympathies for you. I know it was a couple of years ago now, but still.
Yeah, appreciate that, Paul. It's because, you know, we were doing so much on YouTube and we were hanging out so much together. It was quite a shock when he died that young. Yeah.
Of course it was. What's that Michael franchise like?
Oh my goodness! So I hosted a lot of his gigs in the UK.
I was going to go to Glasgow. I was trying to get tickets for the one in Radisson.
Yeah, I think the Glasgow one, it got messed up a bit, but they did manage to do it out of a church. But there was some bad planning, and I think there was a last-minute cancellation that caused that of the venue or something. So it wasn't his and his team's fault, but they did try and save the day by doing it out of a church. And what I saw was everywhere Michael went, love and support, just like with Paul Ferris.
Mm-hmm.
He's an absolute gentleman. And I think, you know, because he was portrayed in Goodfellas, it really goes a long way. That kind of, you know, rubber stamp that he was legit. And the article in Forbes as well, he was one of the highest ever earning members of the mafia for the Colombo crime family.
Aye.
And if you look at all the other people who are in that list, I think they're all dead except for one of them is in prison, and only Francis is out there, a free man, loving life, beautiful family, beautiful kids, everything.
Exactly. I mean, he found his religion, and you can tell he's been sincere with it. So God bless him. I mean, I wish him all the best with his life.
Yeah, I think that's how he ended up doing it out of church in Scotland, was through his religious connections.
See, I'm glad because we were trying to get tickets to see him in Radisson, and if I'd known it was in a church, I'd have just tried to sneak in.
Look, Paul. You know, people who've watched this, they've probably been on the edge of the seats like me, and some of them who are watching this still might want to reach out to you.
Yeah.
Are you on the socials or anything for people to follow you or contact you?
Yeah, I certainly am. I'm on Twitter, and I'm saying my partner set up Snapchat, and I don't really know how to work it. So, but you can certainly follow us on Instagram. My name is Big Smithy 1984. So that's SMITHY 1984. Big Smithy 1984. And my Twitter account is, one moment, please, I'm just looking at the same time, at 30 Paul Smith. So I need to, any followers, I certainly would love it. And any questions anybody's got to ask, without a doubt. I promise everything I say here today is the God's honest truth. I was never a gangster, and I was never a church mouse. I was never, we grew up inspiring to be one or two people, Jimmy Boyle or Paul Ferris. So, and I think we kind of got a taste of both of the life stages. They were just far more successful. And that was that. But I've certainly seen my fair share of violence, and I promise you, anything I've said can be researched and checked, and every word it's true.
And you've got the scars as well, Paul. I think no one's going to doubt what you've told us today. I mean, it's probably a hell of a lot more that you're going to eventually put in your book, and I hope you do get round to doing that. That would be fantastic.
Yep, definitely.
And for the viewers then, all of Paul's links, if you're watching this on the YouTube version, are going to be in the description box. Please go down. Like you said, if you've got a question for him, give him a shout on one of the socials and let us know in the comments what you thought about this. And a huge thank you for watching it. And most of all, huge thank you to Paul for spending so much time with us today. So cheers, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sean, can I ask you one thing? My pal's a big fan of yours, and he's badly injured. Is there any way you can give a shout out to my mate Paul Andrews? He's a big fan of yours, and he's badly injured just now.
Yeah, shout out to Paul Andrews. And if you give me his address after this, Paul, I'll send him a signed copy of one of my books.
There you go. Brilliant. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll definitely do that.
Oh, cheers, Paul. Thank you. Thanks for watching, everyone. Like I said, let us know in the comments what you think. Take care out there, wherever you are in the world. Don't get gangsteritis, young people. Cheers. This podcast is sponsored by Gadfly Press. We're proud to announce the publication of Scotland's Johnny Boy, the bird that never flew. From the back cover, all his life, Johnny Boy Steele has been running, first from an abusive father, then from the rigours of an approved school and a young offender's jail, and finally, from the harshness of adult prison. This book details how the Steele brothers staged the most daring breakout that Glasgow's Barlinnie prison had ever seen, and recounts what happened when their younger brother Joseph was falsely accused of the greatest mass murder in Scottish legal history. We're talking the ice cream wars there. If Johnny Boy had wings, he would have flown to help his family, but he would have to wait for freedom to use his expertise to publicise young Joe's miscarriage of justice. This is a compelling, often shocking, and uncompromisingly honest account of how the human spirit can survive against almost crushing odds. It is a story of family love, friendship, and, ultimately, a desire for justice. So, Scotland's Johnny Boy, the bird that never flew, is available worldwide on Amazon. Link in the description box below this video. Thank you for supporting our sponsor. Cheers.